everybody. Welcome back to episode 7. He's a Porn Addict Now What, the podcast featuring my esteemed co-host and TikTok. I had no idea. TikTok star, TikTok megastar. At what point did you become a megastar? Josh, is it because you're well over 100,000 people? Is a million a megastar? Okay.
I think it was Bill Murray who said, if you want to be rich and famous, try just being rich and see if that works. And it's not making me rich yet. So I will tell you when I am a megastar because I don't care. I want it to come with money.
There you go. Okay, so right now we're just going to go with TikTok star, Josh Shea.
Yeah, that's cool.
Joining me. Yeah. And I feel like people will hopefully not grow tired of us thanking them for feedback, thanking them for joining us on the bonus material. And this is something I had hoped would start to get traction, and it has. And that's because you know this so much better than I do. This is a problem that people, pornography in general, is something that is being easier to talk about. And before we even get to the question today, I am curious. How you're in this space on a day-to-day basis. I found myself almost after working with over 1,000 guys, and I start my virtual couch podcast, and then I don't do episodes about pornography addiction because I realized, I don't want to be pegged as just that. But then I went so far the other direction that then I don't do many episodes on it. So it's kind of nice and refreshing to be jumping back in here. But what has that progress been like over the last few years of people talking about pornography addiction?
It's weird because I'll tell you, I think that the best judge of it is the podcast. When I began, when I wrote my first book before our book, I had to ask and beg and scratch to be on any podcast. If you had a microphone, I was asking to be on your show. You were very nice to let me on, and you were just starting to blow up at the time. But I got so many people saying, not right for us. This isn't right. I don't think so. This is going to scare the listeners. This isn't a good idea. Or just being ignored. And I can tell you a perfect example is that there is a very large podcast in Australia that I don't believe they even responded to me when I asked if I could be on their show. And recently they came to me and asked if I would appear. I'm sure they don't even remember that I sent an email to them 5-6 years ago. But that's kind of the idea.
That is a great gauge.
Finally, our people are able to now say, hey, this is a real thing. And I think what the biggest part is that, number one, people are realizing that this doesn't have to do with the birds and the bees. And number two, you don't have to discuss the content of the pornography. You don't have to talk about what's in it. It's like we talk about the concept of cooking. We don't have to talk about ingredients. We don't have to talk about recipes. We don't have to talk about the taste. We can talk about cooking as a concept without those very specific things. And with pornography, I think people are learning we can use the word pornography, and at least for a younger group, perhaps maybe under 50, under 40, it's such an everyday piece of so many of their lives that as they get older, as this group of people who grew up not remembering a world before high-speed internet, I think that they are the ones who really are going to be the harbingers of change in the future, because they are very adept at talking about this kind of stuff, and it doesn't have the taboos that it may for people in our age group or even older than us. So I'm very optimistic about this new generation of people coming along, not just for the pornography thing, for so many reasons, but I feel like we may have a fighting chance against this. Since we lost so many other battles out there, whether it's alcohol or opiates or whatever it is, maybe with pornography, before this becomes an international epidemic, we will be able to start teaching our kids the right things and start changing as people. I guess we'll see if I'm right or not, but I do have hope now where it was a dark place 5 years ago.
It really was. And that's okay. I'm going to upgrade you back to TikTok megastar because of that. That's a phenomenal response, because I do see that in my practice of people going from never talking about it. And when a few years ago, it felt like the only people that were vilifying pornography were very religious people. And I feel like now it's anybody, because it can affect you regardless. So well done, Joshua. That's why look at that. We haven't even got to the question yet. So here we go. I would love to hear your answer to we're episode 7, question 7 in the book. He always seems to stare at women too long. Should that have been a sign? Josh Shea.
Well, my answer was, I'm sure that you're replaying the movie in your head of all the time you've ever spent with him that you didn't recognize he was an addict. You were wondering what you missed. If you can stop playing the film. It's like a news clip. It's already happened, and there's nothing you can do to go back to change those events. You can shape future events and have an influence on where your life, both together and as individuals, goes from here. Try your best not to dwell on the past. It's easy to get stuck there. He probably had dozens of little tells that were part of his addict behavior. Odds are he also didn't recognize most of them. If I'm driving down the street, especially in summertime, and a woman is pretty, I'll look at her. I think that's perfectly normal. I have a friend that I met through Sex Addicts Anonymous who tells me when he was in his addiction, which had more voyeuristic tendencies than mine, he would see the pretty girl, turn the car around to look at her again, then turn around to look at her again, then go through that routine a few more times. Years ago, if a friend did that, I may have laughed and thought he was putting on a show of being obsessed. Now I recognize it's probably a red flag. Don't make yourself crazy over-examining every little thing he does and trying to draw a line back to his addiction. Instead, figure out which behaviors make you personally uncomfortable and share them with him. If he's obviously leering, drooling, and whistling when a pretty woman walks by, that's not only insulting to you, it's embarrassing for everybody involved. I had a therapist who once said, "You have 3 seconds to think anything you want as a function of human nature. Beyond that, you're making a choice. If he's making the choice to stare down women and you don't like it, say something. The women probably don't like it either."
Oh, I love the way you close that up there. A couple of gold nuggets there. I like what your therapist said. I don't think I've said it that clearly, but I'm going to adopt that because I think, yeah, you think things, you see things, you do things. And if you don't give them a lot of energy, then that's just part of, I think, all kinds of things and see things and do things. But I like that if you hang in there more than 3 seconds, we're in the world of choice. That's good.
Let's hear your answer, though.
All right, here we go.
Too long. Should that have been a sign? Mr. Tommy Overbay.
All right, what I said is we talked a little bit about this earlier, and that was in the world of objectification. So it's not the first look that's the problem. It's the second look that comes in just a blink of an eye afterward. I find that this question, and many others like it, generally comes immediately after a woman discovers the addiction and is less about the behavior and addiction and more about asking themselves, if I notice this, will we not be in the position we find ourselves right now? That's not a productive train of thought. Naturally, you're trying to make sense of how you got here, what, if anything, your role was, and what, if anything, you could have done differently to produce a different result. Asking yourself 1,001 what-if questions is normal, but it's not productive. You can't change what happened. You are where you are now, and you have to look forward. Imagine it exactly like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, knowing you don't have all of the pieces. Let's say you put what you have together, and it's a picture of your partner, and he's holding something, but you can't tell exactly what it is because those pieces are missing. Those missing pieces may show you that he's holding a basket of cookies. They may also show you that he's holding a gun. It may only be a small piece of the overall puzzle missing, but it changes the entire story of the puzzle. You can do some real damage to yourself if you're trying to figure out all of the gaps. Dwelling on the past won't change anything, but focusing on the present and looking toward the future can help both you and your partner on the path to recovery. So I like that we don't rehearse this beforehand. And as we've talked about, we didn't know what each other was going to write when we were writing the book. And right where you ended is where I began. That it's that second look that comes in the blink of an eye where it's a little bit of that choice, or it's the choice being made. And okay, so let me just jump in. And I know that some of the fun about this podcast is talking about where we're at now. Would we change anything here? And I didn't even realize that I was saying this, asking yourself the questions is normal, not productive, because I'm so there now, especially in the world of betrayal, where I feel like people are trying to make sense of something that is not going to make sense because it's something that is happening for the other person, and the other person isn't even aware often of what they're even doing. So there's so many layers away from understanding. And then even if we could get to understanding, we're still not going to understand because it's not our experience. So for the wife that's trying to figure this out, and then I feel like it's such human nature to want to feel like, okay, if we can just get this certainty or figure out how we got here exactly to a T, then it will make sense, and then I won't carry these strong emotions with me. And so I feel like that's our natural tendency to just avoid the uncomfortable emotion. Yeah. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to avoid uncomfortable emotions. We want to label things so we know exactly what they are. And we don't want to allow a little bit of room for human nature. Because like we said, at some point, as the spouse or as the female partner, you were found pretty by your mate. He decided you were good looking, so he pursued and he courted, and you got to where you are today. That was a normal thing, probably. That probably did not have to do anything with pornography. And that's one of those things that I think people forget in our society. And not just with pornography, but you see all those commercials for being depressed, and I think a lot of people confuse depression with sadness. And a lot of people, I don't know what they think the normal bar of people's human behavior is, but you're going to find people attractive, even if you are with somebody. You are going to have sad days, even if you take a fistful of antidepressants. There are just things about being human that we do. And I think that in today's day and age, maybe it's the over-therapization, the over amount of coaches that are out there, and the over amount of pills that you can take to feel better. But I think that we sometimes forget at the core, we are human, we have human emotions, and they are natural.
They are. I like where you're going with that too, because we don't understand what someone else's experience is. And I forget at times when somebody's in my office of just how important it is to normalize, or somebody will say, I don't know, I imagine that I'm the only one that feels this way, where then they tell you something of, I find someone else attractive while I'm in my marriage. I mean, how crazy is that? And then when you, sometimes I have to not react with a, oh, wow, you didn't know that was normal, and so people just, but you only know your own experience. And especially if you don't feel like you can talk about something openly. And I liked in your answer, because you did say it would be nice for you to be able to express, so the spouse be able to express to their husband that, hey, I'm noticing maybe you're leering a bit. Can you tell me more about that? Or are you aware of it? But we just, I say this so often, we don't have those tools from the factory. We don't have the ability, I feel like, without really going and finding out how to have those conversations. That's an uncomfortable conversation. And we're afraid that it's going to blow up into contention, that we just stay away from tension altogether. And that tension is where some growth can occur. So if you hear this and you think, I would love to talk to my spouse about this, and then you find yourself in that moment saying, here's my big chance, and I'll do it later. Perfectly normal. You might need to go get some help, a good coach, a therapist, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So I think these were great answers. And I think that if people tune in for the bonus stuff, I have a very interesting story to share about human nature, about red flags, that is adjacent to this, that will take a few more minutes. But I want people to check out the bonus stuff, because I do have a good story to go along with this as we expand.
I can't wait. All right. Check us out on the bonus side. We'll see you there. Hey, should we do while you're thinking of the story, should we, because we've got 20 minutes. Do you want to do our first ever bonus content episode right now, or do you want us to do the next question? I'm good with either.
Let's do the next question, because I want to go through and actually go through and make notes about what I want to share in the bonus.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea. Okay, so let me hit I think this worked last time. I hit stop, and stop.